What's good, tinfoilers? It's Silo's season, and episode 3 of season 2 is called Solo. Now, in episode 1 of this season, we focused on Juliette and the new Silo, while the second episode brought us back to Silo 18. In this episode, we're splitting time between the two. Now, when we were last with Juliette, she had just introduced herself to this mystery guy behind the locked door to the vault. Now we're going to learn more about who he is and his situation, and in doing so, we'll uncover major clues related to the backstory of this new Silo. Also, things are continuing to escalate back in the old Silo, despite Bernard's maneuverings. Shirley and the rest of Mechanical continue to be a thorn in Bernard's side, so he's turned to Judge Meadows for help in keeping things under control. The old adage that you can't kill an idea comes to mind here. There's more, but let's not spoil it for anyone. Which reminds me, this video is full of spoilers, so if that's not your thing or you need to catch up first, save this one for later. Special thanks to the channel patrons. These people make this little world go round, so hats off to you for making this what it is. Alright people, let's get this show on the road. It's time to dive. So we start off this episode in the new Silo, and we're dropped into the middle of a conversation between Jules and her new friend behind the giant metal door. We're still in the introductory phase, so our guy and Jules are nervously exchanging probing questions about each other. The first piece of concrete evidence we get from this conversation is that we are currently in Silo 17 of 50. So there are 48 other silos besides the ones we've been in. So we're talking about an initial population of about 500,000 altogether. Things get a little strained because the mystery man is nervous about giving Jules any real info about himself, but she eventually gets him to spill a little. Calls himself Solo for obvious reasons, and he claims he is the sole survivor of Silo 17. Solo is starting to warm up to Jules, and he begins to reveal more as they continue to get to know each other. He says that the people who went outside during the rebellion, well, they were actually fine for a while, but then the dust started to blow again, suggesting that whatever toxicity exists in the atmosphere, it's not constant or everywhere at once. He also says that the poison went away for a little bit, but then it came back, and that's when people started dying. Now, this new piece of information is cause for alarm for Jules when she picks up on the discrepancy. She reminds us that the cleaners in Silo 18 die within 3 minutes of leaving the silo. But our friend here is telling us that it is possible to be outside for longer without a suit. The next bit of information is important because it sets up Juliette's mission for the time being. So Solo relays a story to Jules about a citizen from his silo named Ron Tucker. Now, Ron was sentenced to a cleaning, but he chose not to clean the lens of the silo's external camera. He wrote lies on the lens and then he just left. And in doing so, the citizens of Silo 17 got it in their heads that it was possible to exist on the surface. This was the catalyst for the rebellion, according to Solo. Of course, after hearing this, Juliette realizes that she is the Ron Tucker of her own story. Everyone that she knows and loves, plus about 10,000 more people, are possibly at risk because her escape may have given them false hope. Juliette has to get back to her home silo, and she's got to do it yesterday. Solo also brings up the name Russell again, a name we heard during the rebellion flashback in the season opener. The leader of the rebels questions whether the info they got from this Russell person was legit before they went up to the surface. We learned that this guy Russell was Bernard's counterpart in Silo 17, and Solo was his shadow. So you have to wonder, why would he be working with the rebels? Unless, of course, he wasn't really working with them, and this was some kind of ruse to get rid of them. Solo also makes it clear that the vault is off limits to anyone but him, as per orders from Russell, and he plans on upholding them. So you also have to wonder what he's got back there that's so sensitive that no one else can see it. Of course, it wouldn't hurt to know more about the Russell character and what he did prior to the Exodus. Another question that does come up after learning all of this is, did this Ron character survive, and what ended up happening to him? So in the next scene, we head back over to Silo 18, and we're watching Teddy from Mechanical getting arrested by Silo security and hauled off. Teddy has been going around the silo tagging walls with the JL symbol, and he's been found out. This event kicks off a wave of resistance from the people in the lowers who vow not to let the silo make an example out of Teddy. And as you might have expected, Shirley is at the front of it all. Now, Bernard is in a mood today, so much so that he's invited Meadows into the secret room to discuss his devious plan. In this scene, we get a glimpse at just how good Meadows is at politics, propaganda, and control. She might be a little rusty, and maybe she's buried some of this stuff in a memory hole. But Meadows starts spouting off protocol from the Order like it's nothing. She brings up the Order's words on graffiti. Yeah, the Order even planned for that. The book states that graffiti is a no-no. Same goes for anything that glorifies a person who did not clean. Oops. The Order really says all of the quiet parts out loud here, which is probably why no one else is allowed to read this thing. But it's especially loud about the parts where it says that when they need a scapegoat, they should blame someone from mechanical. Essentially, the practice is to unite the middle and the upper class citizens against the people at the bottom. This galvanizes support for whatever it is that they want to accomplish. Invent an enemy, point the finger, profit. This is getting a little bit too real. But Meadows thinks that this tactic is ill-fitted for the situation because of how unique it is. According to her, the solution to this particular can of worms is beyond anything the Order could prepare for them. Bernard's gonna have to get creative. It's interesting how the Order emphasizes proactively eradicating anything that might give people an idea that doesn't exactly jive with leadership, hiding history and dispelling the speech of malcontents. Hallmarks of a heavily brainwashed society. Things get spicy when Meadows starts poking around at Bernard's version of Juliette's arrest and punishment. Meadows wants to know if Juliette asked to leave or did Bernard perform a fancy execution without getting his hands dirty. Of course, Bernard lies to her, and of course, she knows it. Meadows asks if Juliette went to Silo 17, and then if it's viable there. But Bernard says it's not likely, and she looks a little disappointed. Now, this might be a reach, but it almost seems like she wants to go to that silo for a specific reason. Maybe she knew someone in Silo 17. We need more than a vague question and a curious facial expression to put a stamp on this. I'm still leaving this one out there for now. And Juliette's goal is to get a suit and get out of the silo and back to her own to prevent the others from doing something they will regret. So she starts gearing up by scavenging around the silo. Back over in Silo 18, Sims has a scene with a character we haven't seen in a minute. It's old Patrick, and he's been in confinement for what looks like a while. Sims is only being nice here because he needs him to do a job, and you can probably guess that whatever it is, it's not going to be good. The big takeaway from this scene is that Sims lets us know that there is a drug that is used to erase the memories of citizens, and this can be fine-tuned to erase anything from a few weeks to several years. Sims is offering Patty here a dose of that drug to wipe all the bad stuff away, on top of his freedom after completing the job. Now, we've talked about the possibility that the water in the silo is treated with something to mess with memory. And well, here we have it. A small dosage of this stuff in the water, and over time, you might be able to gradually wipe away everyone's memories of the past. Again, this is not confirmation that they use it in the water yet, but it makes sense if they do. What is Billings up to? He's visiting Judge Meadows on request. She's asking about Juliette's official police report, and her questions are focused around whether Juliette was legally forced to clean, so she's still on this. She's keeping her cards close, but her intention is clear regarding this case. Meadows knows Billings is a stand-up guy who knew Juliette personally, so she sees him as someone she can trust, who's also close to the problem. Billings confesses to Meadows about his condition, and she reveals that she already knew he had the syndrome, and she really doesn't care. She has no issue with it. She even suggests that the syndrome may be a natural human response to living your entire life underground, and that the stigma is unwarranted. And of course, Billings is relieved. The point of this scene, though, as I read it, is to build a sense of trust between Billings and Meadows as she continues to investigate Bernard's official story. She's going to need Billings to get her insider information, but it also hints that Meadows has a tiny bit of admiration for Juliette hiding somewhere behind that stoic front. Okay, so back over to Silo 17, Jules returns to the vault door area to find a tin of chicken stew prepared by her new friend Solo. Now, on the surface, this looks like a peace offering or an extension of friendship, but it was really Solo testing out whether Juliette is a real person. Oh boy. Solo has been alone for a long time, so long that he's not sure if Jules is all in his head, so her lapping up that chicken stew at the very least confirms things for him. Dude seems like he's an alright guy, just really terrified of strangers. So we do get a shot from another room showing some bodies lined up next to where Jules sits down to eat, which would suggest to us that Solo might be responsible in some way. So they start talking suits again, a major obstacle for Juliette's plans of getting back to Silo 18. And when Juliette is asked why she didn't clean, she explains that she did it out of protest when she discovered the lie for herself. Juliette returns with the question, why didn't he leave the silo like everyone else? And he starts tripping over his words like he doesn't want to say. She tries her best to draw it out of him, but he's too slippery for her to get a hold of. He only emphasizes the point, keep the door shut. Someone has to stay and guard the vault, and that guy is him. This explains the bodies in the adjacent room and the threatening graffiti on the walls. They apparently got dealt with at some point because they were trying to breach the vault. So now I'm really getting curious about what's behind the big metal door. door. In the next scene, Sims is doing what he does best, torturing people by dancing around the subject until they're sweating bullets before getting to the point. This time, he's visiting a retired raider to enlist him as part of Bernard's plot to thwart the rebellion that's building in the lowers. He's on special orders, just like your boy Patty. So Billings brings in one of the 5 raiders who was a supposed witness to Juliette's request to leave the silo. Now we know Juliette never asked to leave the silo, so the witnesses are lying. We find out later that one of the raiders told the truth, kind of. And that's all Billings needs to put the entire report into question. Time to report to Meadows. But hold on to that thought, we'll be back to this in a minute. Pops is out enjoying an evening stroll, as one does. But he runs into a woman who is nervous about the fact that she's got a shot at getting pregnant. A space has opened up in the silo now that Juliette is no longer a citizen. Now, Pops doesn't say anything at first, but he's really supportive and appreciates the hope that this woman, Phoebe, has for being a mother. He shares what it feels like to become a parent, and you can see the pride he feels. Now, near the end of the conversation, he reveals that he is the guy who would actually be handling the procedure if she were to win the lottery. More on this later. So Jules is trying to catch some Z's in the next scene, but she's disturbed by the sound of loud music in the distance. Solo is calling again. He's got an idea that might help Jules get back home. Fire suits. Jules disagrees, but then she comes around to it. I mean, I guess a fire suit that has the proper seals would work, right? There's only one problem. The suits are on a level that is below the waterline. So first we scuba. Back to Billings and Meadows. Billings has just shared the info with Meadows, and he confirms that he heard from Juliette herself that she did not ask to clean. Meadows is a little disappointed that he didn't speak up earlier, but I think this is a great example of how the pressures to conform work at every level within the hierarchy of power. Everyone is afraid to speak up or draw attention for fear of being targeted. Anyway, the entire point of this Meadows inquest is that she wants to make a case against Juliette's dismissal because what Bernard and Sims are doing is against the pact. We don't know if she wants to take it any further than that, but Juliette never got her day in court as she should have, and now Meadows has what she needs to prove that. Right after this, Meadows grabs a projector off her shelf of contraband goodies and starts watching a video of what looks like family home movies. This scene feels like Lost to me, but I can't say for sure what she's lost. I guess we'll have to wait and find out. Okay, so now we're back in the lowers with Shirley, and she's gathering up the crew for a surprise protest to free Teddy. We get this shot of Patrick in an alleyway with a bottle of something. You already know something is about to go down. The rag and the lighter help make that even clearer. Patty is playing the part of the agitator, meant to escalate the confrontation so that the judicial thugs have an excuse to start cracking skulls. Or worse. Gotta make the protesters look like the villains, right? Notice how they position Knox in direct opposition to Shirley, as in he's with the authority, even though he is a member of Mechanical. His intentions are good. He wants to avoid trouble, but in reality, he's siding against his own people. Once things come to a boil, Patty lobs the cocktail at the wall above the standoff and all hell breaks loose. We spot the raider Sims drafted to be part of this fiasco, and in the middle of all of the chaos, this guy lets off a round that was meant for Patrick, but instead it finds Patrick and Cooper. Just in case it wasn't clear, Sims set this man up to die after he threw the Molotov. Both Knox and Shirley are there to witness Cooper go, and there is a strong sense that this is a turning point for this conflict, and it may be Knox who has a change of heart. Rest in peace, Cooper. So Pop Nichols is in the next scene, and he's facing a conundrum. He's just met with a very nice woman who believes she's got a rare chance at having a child, and he's ultimately the one who decides if this happens or not. He flips the switch. In case you might have forgotten, pregnancy is heavily controlled in the silo, and they use a lottery to pick the winners. That's just a cover story. They really pick and choose who can have children. The lottery part is just to make it look fair. The silo has already decided that Phoebe will not have another child. She just doesn't know that, and she'll never know. Now, Dr. Nichols knows this, and although this is the official decision from higher up, he has the power to deviate. On the day that Phoebe is meant to get her fake birth control removal, Dr. Nichols pulls out the birth control, but he doesn't put in a new one. Phoebe can get pregnant now. What does this mean? This is Dr. Nichols' little rebellion. Pops is probably inspired by Juliette and her courage to do the right thing, even when it's the hardest to do. He knows he'll get in trouble for this, but he's at the point now where he's had enough of being scared. Looking forward to more disruptive behavior from the good doctor. There is an important meeting between Shirley and Knox down in the hidden area of the lowest parts of the silo. Shirley confronts Knox, asking why he chose to stand against the protesters. Shirley does some venting at Knox's request, and this diffuses things a bit. They realize they want the same thing, but they have different ideas on how to get there. So they agree to work on a new approach. We just don't know what that means yet. But it has something to do with the wall with the names way down in the unfinished area below the silo. Okay, I gotta ask, do Bernard and Meadows have a history? Because the next scene seems to suggest as much. While at Meadows' place, Bernard is explaining to her that the suit she is going to need, according to their little deal, has to be prepared and measured by Bernard to keep things on the low. And then we get these moments where Bernard is getting her measurements, and well, this is a different kind of spicy. I can't tell if he's crushing or maybe they had something in the past, but Bernard is definitely giggity for Miss Meadows. At least that's what I'm getting. Seriously though, during all of the measuring, Meadows asks Bernard if she's been helpful, to which he says, of course. Then she asks, why didn't he follow her advice then to free Teddy? Because she knows that the firebombing and the shooting was set up by Bernard, and she's grilling him over it. It seems she's afraid that Bernard's tyrannical instincts are leaning more and more towards aggression and violence. Not something she's cool with, and she makes it clear that she disapproves. She also calls him out about Juliette's supposed request to leave the silo, which, to be honest, kills the romantic mood. So when we last checked up on Juliette, she discovered that the place she needs to get the suits is underwater. So she's back at Solo's door asking for his assistance setting up an oxygen line for a diving rig. Solo is reluctant. He keeps telling her he can't leave the vault, but you can tell he wants to help her, but he doesn't know if he trusts her enough to break his rule for her. Jules tries to use the 10,000 people whose lives are at stake as an argument, and it seems like a waste of time at first, but as Juliette leaves the area, Solo calls out to her, but this time it's from outside the vault. After a brief but funny last man on earth moment, they sort of reintroduce themselves, and then Jules offers to take him anywhere he wants to go in the silo. Solo hasn't been this far out since he began his vigil at the vault apparently, so this is a big deal for him. But he says he wants to go up. So does this mean he wants to leave the silo too? I wonder how Bernard responds if a supposedly dead Juliette comes back to the silo and she's got a guest. I don't think there is anything written in the order for that scenario. So I got some questions. What is Knox planning, and what does it have to do with the names written on the wall? Question number 2, why do you think Russell told the people it was okay to go outside? If he was the head IT guy, wouldn't he be aware of how lethal it is? So did he lie, or is it more complicated than that? And now that we know about the memory erasing drug, do you think that the silo has been spiking the public water and food supply? Those are just 3 questions I came up with. There's a lot more. This episode was better than the first 2, in my opinion. The overall story is coming together pretty well. Good to great performances in every scene. Good pacing and editing, and there were no throwaway scenes. Well done. 5 out of 5 for me. Really, no complaints. That's a wrap on Silo 3 Solo. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you already know what to do. Big up to the patrons and the whole tinfoil gang. Remember to try kindness first, and until next time, off you go.